Hi, everyone. Good morning. So I'm throwing the Early Childhood Agenda website into the chat, just so everyone has that. I thought we'd start by just doing a quick overview of what the resources are that are available to everyone who's participating in the agenda process, and then a bit of a preview of the activity that we did at the last meeting and what sort of to look forward to at our next meeting on Thursday. All right. So the first thing I wanted to highlight is just the website and where you can find information on the events. So as Amy mentioned, we're gonna be bringing the conversations from the Early Childhood Agenda to the 9:30 call. We're also going to be highlighting that at the 9:30 call at night. So from 8 to 8:30 on Thursday, we'll have a 9:30 call at night meeting. And you can find all of the events related to the Early Childhood Agenda here on the events page on the website. So whenever we're going to be discussing it on the 9:30 call, the working group sessions. So we have a few more meetings where we're going to be splitting off into working groups, and then there will also be a few Early Childhood Agenda meetings where we stay together the entire hour-and-a-half session. So the next one would be Thursday, November 10th from 10 to 11:30 a.m. And we will end the 9:30 call a little bit early on those days. And then, as I mentioned, we also have a 9:30 call at night this week from 8 to 8:30 p.m. on November 10th. All right. The next thing I wanted to share is, as Amy mentioned, signing up for the Early Childhood Agenda is really the best way that you can guarantee that you're going to get all the information. We're trying to make sure that we're sort of tailoring content to folks' level of interest or their level of engagement. So if you are signed up for the Early Childhood Agenda, you'll be getting all the information that's included on the website. And as Amy mentioned, we sent out an email on Friday that gave some instructions for the activities that we worked on during the last working group session and what we should be working on for the next few weeks. And the best way to sort of engage with the activities, to find all the resources, is to log into Basecamp, which we also have instructions for that once you sign up. So I just wanted to give a quick preview of Basecamp just so everyone can see what it's like on there, and I can give a couple examples of some of the topics that we've been discussing, the places where you can find content and activities, and how we're going to be using Basecamp in the future. All right, so when you sign up for the Early Childhood Agenda, you receive instructions for how to log into Basecamp. So you can see here that there's about just under 115 folks have signed up for Basecamp. So they're into this system. And our goal with this is that you have just sort of a one-stop shop for everything related to the agenda, so that you don't have to scroll through your emails to find different threads constantly, and then you're not having to look for different Google Docs, that we have everything in one place, knowing that there's going to be a lot of moving pieces, especially in the next few weeks as we really start to ramp up the activity. So there are really 4 components to Basecamp. The first component is the message board. This is a place where over the past few weeks we've used it to sort of post announcements, to continue the conversations that we've had during the 9:30 call, during the working group sessions, where we're working on language, asking for feedback, trying to make additions, and sort of keep the conversation going before the next meeting as well. So I'm going to zoom in on that just to give a couple examples and highlight 2 places where we are finalizing engagement. So last week we asked for some final feedback. This would sort of be the 3rd iteration of these 4 pieces of language. So the vision statement, the values of the Early Childhood Agenda, the principles from the EC 101 project, as well as which we have incorporated into the Early Childhood Agenda as, I think it's 9 principles for what every young child and family should have access to in Massachusetts. And then the guidelines. So the guidelines is really the set of questions that we're asking partners participating in this process to think about, to consider as we are providing feedback, and using those guidelines as a way to prioritize items to move the agenda forward and to decide what we're going to include in the final document. So on October 28th, we posted this originally, and we shared some of the vision statement language, the values, think I'll read through some of these actually. So the vision statement, the Early Childhood Agenda imagines, prioritizes, and builds collective action around equitable and impact-driven solutions by implementing policy change into practice that supports healthy beginnings and high-quality experiences for young children, financially secure families, and robust system infrastructure and partnerships at the state and local level so that all young children, families, the early childhood workforce, and the economy may thrive. 4 values, so evidence-based solutions was 1, advancing diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, engaging and centering voices, leveraging strengths, and then professionalization. The guiding principles that I mentioned from EC 101, so that was one piece. I think, let me scroll down just so we can see the real-time impact here, but that was one where we know we brought this to the 930 call and we had some comments on the language. I don't know why I can't find it now. But the change from early childhood service, there it is, early childhood service providers to early childhood professionals, which was number 6. I know that was a piece of feedback that we got from the 930 call. So we've incorporated that here as well as a number of other changes, and then wanted to get some final feedback on these principles. And then finally, the guidelines for setting the agenda. So this is really about the purpose of the agenda over the next few months and wanting to prioritize, elevate, and sort of garner collective action around a set of agreed upon priorities for the early childhood community, that over the next 2 years, these are the things that we want to see accomplished. And the reason why we included a 2-year timeline is because we really are piloting this sort of a structure and wanting to build these partnerships across different sectors, wanting to work collectively as the early childhood community. And we know that there are so many different programs and services and professionals that work within that community. And so to elevate a few things that we all sort of agree upon collectively while also working in our specific sort of elements of the sector as well. So some of the guidelines for setting the agenda that we've talked about so far is the agenda aligned with our vision, principles, and values? Is it designed to raise awareness, change behavior, or do both? Who will this benefit? So will it benefit the child, the family, or the early childhood professionals? And one of the things that we're going to be posting on the message board this week actually is some definitions. We've talked a lot about writing some definitions for the working groups, writing some definitions for early childhood professionals. So when we're referring to early childhood professionals, we're really meaning anyone who's working directly with children and families between the ages of sort of birth and 8 years old. So cutting across multiple different sectors, programs, and services, thinking sort of more broadly than early educators, family child care providers, center-based sort of directors, anyone who is working with children and families. So incorporating more of like the health, social work, social services aspects of early childhood as well. Is this something that's actionable within our 2-year timeline? We talked about this a lot during my working group meeting last week, where we, the real purpose for that one, because we know that that is really restrictive, that there are a lot of things that we will want to focus on that will take a lot longer than 2 years. And that's not to say that that's not going to be a priority at some point, but that this year, while we're trying to set up this infrastructure and create these partnerships, that focusing on something that we can all sort of collectively work on over the next 2 years was one of the goals. What individual agenda items and combination of agenda items have the biggest net impact on children and families? Are we prepared to act on this agenda item, and who is doing work on this? Is there political will? Have we tried this before? And if so, what can we learn from previous attempts? What levers are different this time? And then what is the agenda item's direct relevance to early childhood? So you can see under this that we had a few comments on language changes, additions, things that we wanted to make sure that we were incorporating. I think the need to define some of the terms really came up in the comment section here. So just an example of how we're using the message board, and what anyone who is interested in participating in the early childhood agenda but is not able to come to working group meetings or to the 930 call or the 930 call at night, you really will have all the information you need in Basecamp. So as long as you're in that system, you'll have instructions, you'll have sort of a guide for how to provide feedback and input throughout the process. So just as a highlight, this week, we're really looking for feedback on the working group descriptions. So that's one of the message boards that's currently open right now. We've started some definitions for each of the 5 working groups. So financially secure families, high quality experiences, thriving early childhood workforce, robust system infrastructure and local partnerships, and then healthy beginnings. So once you get in Basecamp, feel free to pop over there and provide some feedback on those components. The next section I wanted to highlight is the schedule, and I really wanted to just highlight one part of this. So as I mentioned, the website has every event related to the early childhood agenda on it, as well as recordings for previous events. So if you've missed a meeting and you want to watch the recording, you can feel free to do that there. That's also included on Basecamp. So when you scroll down, you can see all the different events that we have coming up. But the most important thing that I wanted to point out is this blue link here at the top. So once you're in Basecamp, you can click add this schedule to your Google Calendar, Outlook, and iCalendar. So just a little bit of a technical difficulty on our part because the agenda dates are so different. We couldn't create one standing link that we could share with everyone. So we do have this here where to be able to import the sort of iCalendar link into your own personal calendar so that you have the meeting times on your calendar. And then we also have included the different Zoom links as well. So when you're on here, like as an example, if you want to click on the Thursday working group meeting, you can see that the Zoom information for the homeroom is all there. And the structure for the early childhood agenda is for every meeting, we will always meet in this homeroom, which is the same link every time. And then for certain meetings, when we are breaking out into the smaller working groups, we will sort of direct you how to do that once we're all together in the homeroom. All right, the final 2 sections that I wanted to share is the to-dos section and then the documents and files section. So starting with documents and files, this is really where we're going to start to save resources, pull together the work that we know many members of the early childhood community are working on. So as we think about individual agendas for organizations or for coalitions, we know that one of the guidelines for setting the agenda is going to be who's doing work in this space and are we prepared to sort of move this forward over the next 2 years. So this is primarily going to be the place where we are saving a lot of those materials, as well as recordings and activities. So as an example, I'm going to do mine actually. So each member of the Strategies for Children team is sort of helping to facilitate one of the working groups. And I am in the high quality experiences one. So I will dive into that one just to give an example, but this is where we've posted the activity for this week. And you can find the link and the instructions for what we are trying to accomplish. So during the first working group meeting, what we're really doing is sort of continuing the conversation around a question that we asked during the kickoff, which was, what about the early childhood system is keeping you up at night? So what are those big challenges that we all, either working with children or who care about people who work with children and for children and families that we care about and that we know is a major challenge in sort of holding us back in Massachusetts. So we did a little bit of a deeper dive on that question, and we wanted to expand on it and identify the big issue areas that are present challenges for children and families in the early childhood community. And then in the weeks ahead, we're going to sort of narrow our focus. So once we have a few of those big buckets, we're thinking around 3 to 5 for each of the different working groups. We're going to zoom in so that we're really specific on what is the challenge within that issue area so that we have really concrete solutions that we can work towards as well. So in this post, you can see the instructions for completing the activity. What we're really asking for is problem statements around early childhood. I'll give an example of that in just 1 minute. Well, we have a few there actually too. So in our group, a couple of the examples that we talked about is that policy and practice is not grounded in child development and brain science. That's something that's really holding us back from high quality experiences for children and families. And that many families don't have the knowledge, resources, or tools to support healthy child development was another one, as 2 examples. And then to always sort of consider those guidelines. And I think that will really come into play as we're thinking about prioritizing items and establishing what will be on the agenda in the end. I'm going to pull over to chat for a second just so we can see.
Yeah, so Marissa, Ryan Gold has a question. And is this activity only for those in the specific work group or want to be, or for everyone, even though they're in a different work group?
Yeah, so because the working groups are meeting simultaneously, we did ask folks to sort of commit to attending the meetings live for one of them so that we have sort of a consistent group in those rooms each time. But that being said, everyone is welcome to participate in any or all of the working groups. So we know that there are, I think early education and care is a great example. The people who are working in early education and care, the content that's being discussed in each of these working groups cuts across the entire system. So you're gonna have valuable sort of input that you could add to each of the different working groups. So it's really up to everyone. Whatever you are most interested in, feel free to contribute to that. If you want to provide feedback to all of them, feel free to do that as well. We're really opening it up this week, and we know that there are many that aren't coming to those working group meetings at all, so that the virtual participation is the only way that they are participating as well. And so yes, it's fully open to anyone. You can participate in the activity regardless of whether you are attending those working group meetings. Yes, yeah, Magina, you can definitely come to the next one too. It's not going to be confusing. We're because there's, sort of 5 different meetings happening simultaneously. Each of the working groups are at slightly different points in this process too. So what we're going to do next at the next meeting is really just sort of continue the conversation from the last one, dive a little deeper, make sure that we're all sort of in the same place and ready to post some voting opportunities and to really start to elevate what the largest challenges are over the next couple of days and weeks. All right, and then the final thing I wanted to share in Basecamp before I dive into the activity, just to show what that looks like, is this, the to-do section. So this is where we're gonna really post what the action is that we're asking of everyone each week. So you can see it's organized by weeks. The first week we had an action around continuing to brainstorm draft language. We talked about sort of who's missing from the conversation. So I can share from my working group, we really identified that it was a very early education and care focused conversation. So when we talked about some of the problem statements that we wanted to add to our board, was really thinking about when we think of other programs and services beyond early education and childcare, what are some of the challenges to sort of ensuring high quality in those spaces as well. So like home visiting was an example that came up a lot, or early intervention was another one. What are some of the major challenges within those spaces that we can add to our board as well? So continuing that conversation, and then for this week, to review and provide feedback on the draft language working group descriptions, which I shared in the message board, and then to continue to provide feedback on the group map activities, which we were just taking a look at down there. So when you click on the to-do, it really gives you some more instructions. It's pretty much the same as what's posted in each of the folders, and just directs you to each individual folder so that you can find the links there. All right. See another comment in the chat, so I'm just gonna make sure. Okay, so the last thing I wanted to share is just a highlight or an example of what one of the activities looks like once you're inside of it. And we're really looking for just sort of continued feedback at this point. Some of the groups have started voting, others haven't. Totally fine either way. We're really looking to sort of make sure that we have all of the content on the board over the next few weeks. So sort of using my example of early intervention and home visiting is a couple of the programs and services that we identified as wanting to have more content on. What we are asking everyone primarily to do is to take a look at the activities, to see what's missing from those boards. Where is there additional input that's needed? Where do we need to make sure that we're thinking holistically about early childhood and all of the different things that children and families interact with during those time periods? So I'll share the high quality experiences board just as an example so everyone can take a look. So on Group Map, which is going to be the program that we use for most of the activities of the early childhood agenda, there are sort of 4 components to the board. There's a brainstorming section, which you can see sort of in the upper left-hand corner here. So when it's highlighted in blue, that's how you know that you're on that sort of step of the process. And sometimes we'll leave the boards open so that you can navigate each of those 4 components on your own. Other times we'll sort of restrict your abilities so that you can only add to one component of it, depending on what's needed. So you can see that during the first working group session that we had a lot of content here where we were sort of providing different comments and ideas of challenges for high quality experiences. And then we started to group them together into problem statements. So what we are really doing here is looking for similarities in different challenges. So I'm going to give a couple examples just so we can see what is there. So policy and practice is not grounded in child development and brain science. So when you click on that, you can see that we've grouped a few of these together. So we had ratios are too high, especially for children with high developmental needs, children are sorted according to date of birth rather than skill level, research and best practice passed on to educators and the broader audience. Too many programs are focusing on academic learning despite the overwhelming research preferring play-based and child-centered interactions as well. So just a few examples of how we're starting to group these together so that we have these large problem statements. And then, as I mentioned, in the next few weeks, we're really going to narrow in on what those specific challenges are. So I think those 4 options are a few examples of what those challenges are. And then also in the next few weeks, probably as an activity following the next meeting, we're going to vote. So once we feel like we have a good amount on this list, that we really feel like it encompasses the entire early childhood space and that we've covered a lot of the major challenges that we're working on and thinking about right now, then we'll move to the voting section where we will ask participants to upvote the challenges. So this is really where we'll ask you to consider what's sort of happening right now in the early childhood space. We're going to ask many of the organizations and coalitions that are working in these different areas to come to the 9:30 call-in to share more about their work so that we all have an understanding of what is happening, and that will be a component of this as well. And then each participant will have 5 votes to disperse throughout the different challenges. And then you can see, as just a few of the examples, we'll be able to see which of the priorities have sort of been elevated to the top, and then we can take a look at that and make sure that nothing's missing or that we are sort of in agreement with what has been elevated. All right, so I think I'll stop there and see if there's anything else. The other thing I wanted to share is that we do have a multilingual engagement opportunity on November 17th in Spanish. So I'm going to put that in the chat as well, just so everyone can take a look at that.
Wow, Marissa, right on time for the 9:30 call here at 9:58. I think a couple of headlines that we've been talking a ton about internally. First, we are also learning in this process. So it has been incredible to have people's patience, thoughtfulness, idea generating. So we really appreciate the feedback loop. As you can see in the video that we shared last week, we are really taking to heart and to content the things that people are sharing. Secondly, we are going to ask everybody to stretch and expand beyond early education and care. And we really are doing work to try to get outside of our kind of comfort zone where we spend most of our time to think about early childhood. And so we need everybody to help keep us honest and keep connecting us to folks. Even last week, somebody emailed me that she had no idea about the 9:30 call and she couldn't believe all she was missing. We know that getting to people who are doing the work can be tricky. And we want to make sure that, as Neri said in our email, that as we're building this consensus process, that the people who are doing the work are represented in the decisions that are getting made. So please think about how you can share this and how you can help folks engage. We have been so impressed with the conversations happening in Basecamp, the back and forth between people kind of putting things out onto the chat boards and people working through some things. The last thing I'll say is many of us have been talking about many of these issues for many, many years. So we are not starting at ground zero, but we are starting at a place where we would think about using all this expertise that is in the virtual room and really moving that forward. You keep hearing that this is our moment. We'll talk, actually, we're going to have the review of the economic development bill on Wednesday. So we'll do a quick post-elections update and then hear more about the bill. But one thing that we did notice the first time around was that there was additional dollars put into this high quality affordability trust. And we'll talk all about that, but we are seeing evidence of this being a priority. And so we really want to build on this momentum and take the step that we need to come together and really deliver this agenda in January. And so I think in that spirit, we would invite you to continue to participate, to continue to tell people about it. This is open to everyone, which can be hard to do as everybody is doing their work every day. But Basecamp has been so exciting to see people at all hours of the day, sharing their thoughts. Marissa, any final comments?
No, I think that was perfect. Just excited to keep working on this with everyone, and we'll see where it takes us. It'll be fun.
Great. So we will see everyone tomorrow. We're gonna move the economic development bill conversation to Wednesday. So stay tuned for tomorrow. We will show tomorrow, Starting at Zero has created a shorter version of the Massachusetts video, which we will share tomorrow. And have maybe we'll have a different, more time to talk about some of these big issues around the early childhood agenda. Until then, everybody have a great Monday, and we will see you tomorrow. Thanks.